Hello, Ryan here, and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday. This is a weekly show which covers all of the news from the week just past. Be sure to subscribe if you like what you see, and let's get on with it. This week, Inside Star Citizen showed us the upcoming selling feature with changes to loot to accommodate it, plus plenty of quality of life updates coming to the medical system. Alpha 317 is still with the Evocati making headway towards Wave 1. Talking of which, we had a Star Citizen Live this week talking about 317 and what to expect, and it is certainly not to be missed as 317 is shaping up to be a pretty incredible new addition. So just a quick update on Alpha 317 before we begin. It is still with the Evocati test group and currently they are on their 4th build, with ship-to-ship refueling being the latest addition to the testing focus. Now it likely still has at least a week, if not a little bit more, with the Evocati before expanding to the rest of the waves, but Jared did say that they are on track to release it at the end of the month, so we will see. In regards to the latest patch notes video, I'll be getting that out tomorrow as there have been a couple of patches since my last video, but one of them was just a very small update, so I will combine the two for this Tuesday. To check out what the first couple of patches held for 317, be sure to watch my Evo patch notes videos, and I will link them below in the description. So this week's Inside Star Citizen begun by looking at updates coming to looting for 317. Now looting will be expanding to become more exciting and valuable, they say. Firstly, they are now tailoring the loot to the location, so the loot will make sense to the specific location you're in rather than just being simply randomized. Also, they are finally dividing the loot into categories with common, uncommon and rare. Now anything uncommon, these items are no longer available in the shops, so security armors, pirate armors and content specific to certain groups. For the rare items, these are items that are now more valuable, but also much less spawned in the verse. Now to complement the updates to looting, as we know 317 brings the first version of selling, which will allow players to sell off loot and items that they have bought or found, as well as ship items, which is nice to know. So the shops will now have these updated kiosks, which I will say visually I did prefer the old style to these new styles, but I know the UI is not finished at all. But these will allow us to sell the various items that we have found either through looting or buying things. Now for 317 it is a very simple system to determine what can be bought at what shops, and basically if that shop sells that type of item, then you will be able to sell that type of item there at that shop. So for example, if they sell FPS weapons, you can sell FPS weapons. If they sell medical equipment, you can sell medical equipment and so on. Pricing wise though, it will start out at 90% value of what that shop sells, and then dependable on their current inventory, the price will scale down to about 50%. So if you have a lot of that item, they won't pay as much, but it sounds like you will always be able to get minimum 50% of what that item is worth from a shop brand new. Now if they don't sell that item, you will be able to sell it at 50%. There has also been an update passed to adjust many of the current prices for items, with rarity affecting much of it, so items not purchasable in stores, or of course rare items that are hard to come by being worth even more. With Pico Balls, they say, actually being the most rare item and valuable if you are able to find them. So we must keep our eyes peeled for Picos. Now a cool addition, which I am very glad that they have thought about before rolling out this feature, is the ability to, on the fly, detach weapon attachments before you sell them. And if you wanted to sell the full item with all the equipment on, you can. You will get a better price because a scope is worth so much, a silencer is worth so much. But if you wanted to keep those items for a different weapon, you will be able to just detach them and then sell it on. Now, in regards to stacking, he did mention about inventory stacking. They know it's annoying not having the option, and they will eventually get to that, but for 317 it still won't be in, but they are making the selling process a little easier with a quick sell option. So you'll still have 20 of the same item listed side by side, but instead of having to go through each one and press sell and then confirm, you can just go quick sell, quick sell, quick sell, quick sell. However, there is no rebuy option just yet, so do be careful selling something in case you actually still want to keep it. Now for the future, they are going towards getting the items that you sell to the shops affecting the actual inventory of that shop's inventory, so allowing other players to come and purchase items that maybe you have brought in or other players have brought in that you can purchase. Now he did say at the time of recording this episode that they are hoping to get this into 317, so having the inventory be affected by what players are bringing around, but he says They can't guarantee it's going to make it in with this build, but it is something they want to bring in going forwards. So whether that means a 317.1 or whether it means like a 318, we don't know. But fingers crossed it does come in for 317. I really hope they can bring that in because it will definitely have big effects on the verse. But I know that Todd Pappy did say during Star Citizen Live, which was, I think, recorded after Inside Star Citizen, that it won't be in. But we will see. Now he says they will continue to monitor the kiosks and the selling process to help balance pricing and the amount of loot available, and they would like to hear our feedback. Now this, personally, is a great step forward to creating that proper MMO feeling. Selling and rarity are key aspects to any MMO, and it will also provide more ways of making cash, but also creating a feeling of reward, so expanding on the looting system to create rarity, and of course over time more items will be brought into the game with various rarities, providing a greater sense of achievement when you find something rare or that you really want to use and either keeping it or selling it for a much better price. Cannot wait to see this in 317 and see how it feels searching for all this gear. So a great step forwards and definitely a big addition to the verse. Now after this, we heard about updates to the medical system that was brought in initially for Alpha 3.15. This was the Tier 0 implementation of that system in Alpha 3.15, but for 3.17 they have done some updates and fixed a lot of issues. For example, bleeding is now less harsh. It has been dialed back so that you don't just bleed out almost immediately. Insta-death should no longer happen. They don't want people just immediately dying from a single shot, so that should no longer happen. You are more likely going to get an injury than just die. Also, hunger and thirst and player statuses should now persist between logging in, so no longer resetting itself every time you log in and out, which is a nice addition. Also, you should no longer get a crime stat when you ram your own corpse. I didn't even know that happens, but that must be so annoying, and as the developer says, not doing good stuff for your dignity. Anyway, an interesting inclusion for injuries now includes a little probability. So for example, if you are jumping from a certain height, like off of the top of a tree, there is just as much chance that you could break your legs or be completely fine. So they've introduced a kind of random element that will achieve some variety that is not just a predictable gamified value. Now when I first heard about this, I actually didn't like the idea of having random elements being injected into the game, as it's something that you can't control through skill. But the more I think about it, the more it does make sense. It is kind of true that sometimes in real life you can do something where you come out completely unscathed, whereas others would be severely injured. And also, much about succeeding in games these days is about learning the game's systems so that you can anticipate the outcome. So having this randomized element that will make taking chances more like taking a chance and not playing the system. So I do really like the sound of this, and it will be intriguing to see just how this works and how it plays out. Now, beyond 3.17, he does say there is still a lot to do, like improving body dragging, especially where elevators are involved, also including more severity to death, like permadeath, DNA degradation, being charged to respawn, and so on. Although these are a little way off, he says that is still the direction they are going, which I'm really excited to see come along, as it will encourage more planning, more thoughtful gameplay, plus allow the medical system to properly flourish. When 3.15 came out, I loved responding to medical beacons. Each situation was something different. You had to treat someone differently, you had to get to them differently, and then help them back to where they needed to be. But of course, mostly due to the bugs killing the players, or the medical bugs that have crept in since, the lack of severity to respawning, most players just do it anyway, including myself. You know, I would sooner just respawn because of a bug not allowing people to get to me, or my beacon not working. So trying to play as a medic is a bit few and far between now. Hopefully for 3.17 this becomes more viable, as many of the medical bugs sound like they have been addressed, and I would like to get in with my medical division and actually start just responding to all the various beacons being pressed. But we'll see how that goes. But that was Inside Star Citizen, a great episode, getting me even more excited for 3.17. Here's hoping we are not waiting long to play it, as it is slowly but surely becoming more of that MMO game that we're all waiting for, and less of this feeling of it being more like an alpha. Anyway, let us move on. So this week's Star Citizen Live was a bit of a beast. We have Todd Pappy, who is the Star Citizen Live gameplay director for the PU, talking about Alpha 317, and it's looking like it's shaping up to be a pretty epic patch. Now the first question was, how will the new ATC or Air Traffic Controller keybind deal with multiple ATCs in one area? And he says it will just default to the closest in proximity, but if they need to tweak it, they will. Now, the next few questions are all revolving around refueling and fuel gameplay and that kind of stuff. With the first one being, is there going to be a fuel quantity rebalance in 317 to make it more necessary? And he says it will be rebalanced. The sweet spot to refueling, he says, should be around every 1.5 to 2 hours of gaming before needing to refuel. But of course, this will be very dependable on what ship you use, how you're flying it, what you're doing, and the distances that you're traveling, and much more. Bear in mind, this rebalance will still not be the final version, just more of a stab at it to bring it more in line with where they're going, and they will continue to tweak it from there. Next question is there only one type of hydrogen fuel and one type of quantum fuel in 317? And for 317, yes, it is just one type of each, but when we start getting more into refining gameplay, we will be able to make our own gas, and we will be able to try to make the best grade fuel that we are capable of, like 95% grade versus 99% if you are better at it. And the less of the grade that you are putting into your ship, the greater the wear and tear, the less efficiency it will have, maybe lesser boost capabilities. These numbers are now available to the developers to be adjusted. They just need the ability for players to actually refine the gas. Now, I love how this is sounding and shaping up to be, giving refuelers the ability to refine their own gas to achieve the highest grade possible so they can charge more for it. And like with most things in the game, I would assume the refining process will be skill-based too, so those who are good at it can make more money and make a name for themselves as the go-to refuelers in the verse. Really like that idea. And I guess this is another step towards that. Now, the next question is, will refueling continue to evolve as we have seen with mining? Now, he says not in the short term, as the team who would be working on this is currently finishing off the first version of the resource management, so getting engineering and things like life support in the ships as well, making the ships feel more alive so that they can be disabled instead of just simply destroyed. Also, the same team is working on salvage, so they are pretty focused on other stuff, but they wanted to get fuel updated for Pyro as there is less infrastructure there. It is also 3 times the size of Stanton, so they are prepping for that scale increase of the system. But I'm quite happy with 317 bringing in the refueling mechanic, getting that kicked off while they focus on ship engineering, life support and salvage, and then moving on to maybe develop refueling further. Some great stuff in the works and coming pretty soon as well. Now the next question is, are you actively working on a fuel related balance pass like traveling distances, fuel tank capacities, fuel scoops and so on? And he says, yes, they are. Certain ships he does mention, like fighters, I think was mentioned before, will lose their fuel scoops and the ability to refuel while flying around. And they will be rebalancing fuel as they go through the 317 waves. I think the initial release of it just came out in the most recent 317 patch. Apologies, I haven't covered that yet. I'll try and cover that one on Tuesday. But with each PTU patch, they will balance it a little bit more, get it to where they want it to, so that when it gets to live, it'll be in a good spot, but then, of course, they will likely balance it from there as well. Next question is, will there be NPC missions revolving around refueling in 317? And unfortunately, there isn't, as they are still finalizing the feature of refueling for 317, but also the majority of the AI-focused teams are on Squadron 42. Now, this does cross over a little, as both Squadron and PU needs NPCs capable of flying around and landing, the planetary navigation mesh, the, bringing in reinforcements and so forth. And most of the work on AI right now is combat focused because it is Squadron 42. But of course, a lot of that will transition to the PU. So next question is, will there be refuel beacons for 317 for players? Now he says this will come in a later release. They need to update the service beacons first, which they didn't have time to do. And I think it was mentioned that for 317, you will be using global chat to coordinate a refuel, which I know does bring a lot of problems, like being ganked by players. But service beacons will come later on, which will hopefully tie in with like the reputation system, like giving players reputation as well. So it might be a little problematic to start with. I am sensing there will be a few issues trying to get refueled via players in 3.17, where people might be setting a trap, which is kind of cool in itself, but obviously not something you want to keep running into. But we will see. I'm sure my org, if things run smoothly with refueling, we will be out there trying to help refuel players. So it might not always be such a bad idea. Now, next question. Moving on from refueling, will ships that came out in previous patches release for in-game purchase in 3.17? A good question, because there is a lot that has been left behind. Now he says the Cyclone MT and the P-72 have been added to 3.17. The Hoverquad and Cutlass Steel will be in for 3.18 at the latest, but he didn't mention about anything else beyond that. And I know there is another ship or two that is yet to be purchasable, and I can't remember what they are. But yeah, no word on them ones. Now, next question. Will the Hull's folding mechanism stay extended when logging out of the verse and then back in again? Now, they say as of recording the Star Citizen Live, they have a fix for this coming in. So it should work, and this goes for all ships no longer switching back to their default state when logging in. They should remain in the state that you left them in, which would be a very nice fix, because I know every time I log in with my ship, if I'm planetside specifically, my landing gear is up. So it will be nice to have that down. Next question. Can armors bought from the pledge store be sold in 3.17? And they say no, anything webbed entitled cannot be sold. Will there be an inventory wipe for 3.17? And Todd says they're not planning on it. They are trying to wipe less, as they want to see how things can affect the economy as well. But if they need to do it, they will, but they are holding off as much as they can when they can to not bother. So fingers crossed that remains, and all this stuff that we're looting will actually be saleable in the verse. So maybe go for the stuff that you think might be more rare and stockpile on them. So next question, what are the 3 milestones of Alpha 3.17 in your opinion? So Todd says selling, refueling, and the river tech, but also, so a 4th milestone is the scheduling and automation of triggering dynamic events, so that they don't have to be triggered manually by a real person sitting there and hitting a button. So that should be running out for 3.17, and hopefully we could have these events trigger based on the quantum economy and what's going on in 3.17. That would be quite exciting, reaching a certain threshold and then Ninetales triggering or whatever. Now, next question. Talking about Squadron 42, has the core gameplay pillars moved to focus on Squadron 42 first? And if so, how has this affected your progress? Now, it has affected the progress in the PU a little bit. They are still right now in the middle of this adjustment, but the teams are working out what is needed for Squadron 42 first, and then looking into how to bring that into the PU and adjust it accordingly. But Todd does say that there is still a large content team that works on the PU, specifically on the PU, as well as 3 different feature teams that are working on PU-specific features. So it's not everybody, it is just the core gameplay pillar, which is only core features that are specifically needed for Squadron 42. They get implemented into Squadron first, and then they get rolled out to the PU, which will have a slight delay on those specific features, but only those features. Now, this will, of course, speed up the progress of Squadron 42, which is actually a good thing for both those interested in Squadron and those who have no interest in Squadron. As for those interested, it comes along quicker and we get to play it quicker, which I'm very excited for. But for those who aren't interested in Squadron 42, it gets Squadron done quicker, and then those teams can then focus and shift more onto the PU once it's done. So really, it's a win-win once Squadron is released. But as I say, it is more certain core gameplay features that are required for Squadron 42 that will come to the PU later than what they probably would have, but when they are in the PU, they will actually be more fleshed out than what they would have. But they are still continuing to work heavily and releasing content heavily for the PU anyway, so there is plenty of gameplay coming this year, as we are already seeing for 3.17. Now, next question, can we expect more quality of life improvements going forwards? Now, Todd says that they are constantly trying to improve the quality of life of the alpha, which is often very dependable on what the teams are doing and how complicated each specific quality of life fix is. For example, they know the star map is completely broken, and the new star map is, of course, being worked on, and it is that team's #1 priority for Squadron 42. Once they get it to a certain stage in Squadron, it will come over to the PU, but the new star map is a complicated quality of life improvement compared to others that may require less time and work. Now, right now, the big focus is on improving the quality of life for ships, like fixing the lighting, the vis areas, and so on. And each quarter, they are trying to go through and fix as much as they can. And I will personally say that over the last, I don't know, few, like 3-4 patches, quality of life in many areas has improved greatly, and the overall experience is much smoother than what it was. Although this can be patch dependable. I know 3.15 was incredible, 3.16.1 specifically being pretty poor, but it does certainly feel much better overall. And looking at the patch notes and from the word from the Evocati, 3.17 does seem like it's going to be a bit of a big quality of life update from what we are playing now. Next question, is reworking normal in-game development or is it special for Star Citizen? Now he does say it depends on different things. Normally, without a live environment like the PU, you don't notice the need for a rework until you actually create an alpha version. So with having the PU, they have things that were done a long time ago and they are now outdated from the new tech and features that they have now, so they require a rework. But it does sound like having a live environment like the PU to maintain and update is a bit of a double-edged sword. Instead of a traditional game that gets closer to launch, then they put everything together and only then do they see the issues that need fixing and then they have to crunch before the launch. Having the PU allows the developers to fix as they go. It allows us to point out the problems and get them fixed and see potential issues and then resolve them or rework them if necessary. But the downside of this is that it can slow up and hold up certain development as they are spending time doing this instead of building new stuff. But the potential flip side of this is releases like No Man's Sky or Cyberpunk, where things are just not ready at launch and then they have to take a long time to get fixed and it just tarnishes the name of that game. So it's kind of a balance, getting things as polished as possible but taking longer, or rushing stuff out and releasing it but it not being ready. Now, personally speaking, and this is just my opinion on being involved in both circumstances, I am pretty sick of the latter and seeing it as so much the norm now, getting something out and finished and then claiming it's released when it's just not done and not ready for release. So I am quite happy to try this the other way around while we get to play it, but I'm sure many feel differently here. But as long as it's done and it's good, I'll be more than happy. Now, next question, why was the coffee vendor prioritized? Now, he says that the coffee vendor was actually one of the junior designer's first tasks. So onboarding new staff with maybe a lesser vital system, but like the bartender, they are practically reskins of previous behaviors, which will eventually be for all types of vendors in the PU, so weapon vendors and illegal goods dealers and so on, which is actually where they are trying to push to with the coffee vendor. Having a person capable of selling illegal goods to someone in person, as this illegal goods dealer will be roaming around and not really stuck in a shop like the other vendors. And some code, he says, has been done under the hood to get closer to this, which will be a great new addition when it does come along. Having this vendor who is kind of acting like a fence and you can take stolen goods to and sell to, but he's roaming around, you have to time it or find him. But personally, I think the issue here is not really the work that they are prioritizing, because as much as they are pointing out that they're working on the coffee vendor, they are obviously working on many of the other things that players want, but it seems more like they're highlighting the wrong tasks as cards on the release view. When you really think about it, it does seem a bit odd that they would put up the coffee shop vendor on the release view, but not the first rollout of Quantum Tier 0. Now, the likely reason behind this is because of CIG's confidence of each feature and actually releasing it. If they had Quantum Tier 0 on the roadmap, but not the coffee vendor, and then just rolled out the coffee vendor as a background feature, this misinterpretation of CIG prioritizing the wrong features wouldn't happen. But again, they're likely just more confident that the coffee vendor can come in time, but not more than like 70% confident that Quantum Tier 0 will, which is just my 2 cents. But there we go. More on Quantum soon, in fact. Now, next question. Will the prices of items that are sold to vendors vary as more people sell those items to the same shops? Now, right now, he says the prices will be fixed, but in the future, it will be based on wear and tear and stock levels. And as mentioned on Inside Star Citizen, they are trying to, and I hope they do, get the price variable based on how many players are selling those specific items to that shop, which will then change the scale of the sale value from 90% to 50% depending on this. Now, whether what Todd is saying here means it won't make it into 3.17, as I say, this show was probably recorded after the Inside Star Citizen, I don't know. We will have to wait and see, but I can't imagine that it will be far off from 3.17, even if it doesn't come in for the initial release. So, will rivers and water in general offer other gameplay mechanics in 3.17, or is this coming later? Now, they have been talking about swimming internally, but it is not a huge focus for Squadron 42, otherwise it would have come sooner. But right now, they are more focused on fleshing out the core gameplay careers, rather than things like fishing mechanics. So, fishing will come eventually, but not anytime soon. But kind of a follow-up to the river question is, why are we only getting one river? Should we expect more with every patch? Now, they say the first river was done by one guy presenting it versus the Planet team working on it, and there are certainly plans to add more to Microtech and other planets that require rivers, but the Planet team are working on other things. It's a case of working out the tech first to allow it to scale more, but he does say that they will be rolling out more rivers over subsequent patches like 3.18 and 3.19, which is going to be nice to see that scale up. Now, the next question, probably the most significant question, dropping a bomb here for 3.17. But the question is there any news on the quantum implementation? And he says, yes, for 3.17, Tony Zurovec and his team will be rolling it out. And in 3.17, quantum will dictate the price of 3 commodities, being repair materials, quantum fuel, and hydrogen fuel. It'll also affect the prices and where service beacons occur, and 3 probability volumes for piracy, security, and freighters at about a dozen locations. Now, this is the first iteration of quantum, and all that stuff that Tony Zurovec was talking about, with it expanding from here with each patch after. Now, what this means is that around 12 locations, so a dozen locations in the PU, AI haulers will be flying around and resupplying the locations with repair materials and both fuel types as players are using them. But these AI will be flying around in the background as quanta, and then as players fly around, we will have the chance of maybe triggering a probability volume or seeing a service beacon pop up, which will then instantiate the AI, so making them physical NPCs flying around for players to engage with, which one example they gave a while ago could be that a freighter is getting attacked by a pirate, and then if you help them, that freighter then can continue on to where it was going and deliver the goods to the location that needed them. Otherwise, it won't get those resources, which could also be partly to do with the automated triggering of these dynamic events. So it is a huge first step into the full quantum economy and having NPCs also doing much of the work in the background, but this will be affecting prices of specific commodities, with prices increasing if their freighters are not able to get to the locations to restock them. So amazing to hear that this is coming in with 3.17, and I really hope that they can get Tony Z on screen or on one of the shows again to discuss exactly what is coming in for this next build. Although I don't think it's changed much from what he was saying during CitizenCon or his Quantum Quasar and whatever it was speech, both of which I will link below if you would like to learn more. But this is the beginning of fleshing out one of the huge systems needed to make Star Citizen possible. So 3.17 is certainly a massive patch. Now the next question is, when will we be able to filter stock at shopping kiosks? And they have been doing a full rebalance of what is available in stores and have pulled a lot of them out to be lootable. Color variants should be much smaller now, so you don't have to sift through them all, but they know that filtering is missing functionality, but there is currently higher priority tasks needed, like the physicalized cargo. Now they do want a lot more user-friendly features for kiosks and the UI, which will come at some point, but I guess things like physicalized cargo, the cargo refactor, is taking priority there. Next question, will we be able to sell stolen ship cargo? And they say it does require this cargo refactor being able to steal the actual physical cargo boxes dropped by ships or just taking it from their ship. So not for 3.17. Is there any new mission content for 3.17? And he says maybe for 3.17 point patch, but not the initial 3.17 release. Right now he says the teams are more focused on getting other things working, some of which he says we will see from the Montreal team soon. If I was to guess, which is just a complete guess based on what I have read in the monthly reports, it could be this derelict ship settlement with mission content available, which would be exciting if it's that. But also many teams are working on trying to flesh out Pyro and making sure that when Pyro does come, it has the content and the locations to make it as strong as it can be. Now next question is asteroid scanning getting a fix for 3.17? And they said that they do have a fix for it, but it really requires server meshing to be working as intended, which kind of led on to a server meshing update. A light update. It is still proceeding, they say, and what we saw at CitizenCon still applies, but there is nothing new to tell us, other than it's still proceeding and still on track. Now, he says that all the downstream teams are still working for the dates that they said, which was still Q3, Q4 release of static server meshing, but it won't be like a switch where suddenly it's in and everything is great. It'll be a transition that will likely break stuff that will need fixing as they go. And as we have said in previous videos, when this core tech starts rolling out, it is very significant tech, and it will likely have a lot of implications in a lot of areas, causing problems that need to be fixed. But ultimately, it needs to come in, and it eventually will do and be smoothed out. Now, next question is, what can you tell us about the desync improvements? And they say what they have done will result in less larger desync movements, but more smaller jittering of position. So it's not a full fix, more of a temporary improvement to see if it helps get a better read of actual position. And once the PTU begins expanding through the waves, they will continue to see if it helps and tweak it, but they are confident that it will really improve things, which personally, it does sound much better to me, rather than having these large desync jumps where a player is no longer, or a ship is no longer where it was originally, like jumping completely out of view, and moving more to small jitters that still allow you to track the target better and keep on target, rather than, as I say, completely losing the target for periods, would be better. So lots to do, but any improvements will obviously be beneficial. Anyway, that was Star Citizen Live. Next week's Inside Star Citizen will be a sprint report, which I always look forward to, as well as an update from a team that the Evocati may know about, but other players may not. No idea what this is. It could be maybe the team that work with Evocati on the initial releases, but I don't know, as I'm not an Evocati. Anyway, Jared also mentioned that 317 is still on track for the end of this quarter, and he is still in the process of moving to the UK, which I believe will be happening during the Inside Star Citizen hiatus when 317 goes live. Hopefully, we will finally get an update and information as to why he's moving to the UK, as it is all speculation at this time. But that was an epic episode of Star Citizen Live. So great to hear that Quantum is starting its rollout, not just this year, but with the upcoming patch. It really looks like the PU is going to get more fleshed out this year, and great things are certainly coming along. Very excited for 317. Can't wait to get stuck in and get checking out all the new features and showcasing them to you guys here on YouTube and over at Twitch, of course. But that was Star Citizen Live. Let us move on. So also this week, we had a new showdown post in which the guests discuss a new piece of legislation proposed by Imperator Leilani Addison that would reduce the restrictions against AI research. An interesting read that will hopefully lead to more advancements in the verse by way of AI in some way. I do wonder what the narrative team have in mind going forwards. To celebrate St. Patrick's Day, the inverse version Stella Fortuna kicked off with some new green skins plus some new deals. I will link it in the description below should you wish to take a look. And finally, the roadmap was updated. It was only a light update, only a couple of changes, of which I have already covered in a separate video, also linked in the description. So that brings us to the end of the show. If you do enjoy my content, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Also, I am able to do this thanks to my very generous patrons and channel members. If you appreciate what I do and would like to help make it even better from as little as $1 a month, all of the links are provided below.